Hello, Jochen.
Hi, Eero. Good to see you.
It's very nice to see you. So I've been really looking forward to having this with you. So let's maybe kick it off with you, Jochen. I'll talk about the agenda and everything else, but maybe let's start with you. Who are you and what you do and what you have been doing?
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Eero. Yeah, no, my name is Jochen. I'm based out of here in Germany, close to Stuttgart. Have been in corporate worlds for some time. So spent my first 12 years of the career in Accenture, got into the Agile space at the end of my career there. Then went on to a new role within the Bosch company into the power tools division, where we at that time just initiated what we called at that time an agile transformation with a lot of focus about building a new setup for our division of 20,000 people. And I think we will explore a bit into that in the following up questions. And then since, two and a half years, I built my own boutique consultancy together with a business partner. And we are currently trying to help organizations of all sizes in the German European market to actually find their way on how to redefine their work and how they create value. And as a side topic, we are also happy to be the partners of Corporate Rebels. We're leading the Rebel Cell Germany with around 10, 12 companies in the space, progressive companies on exchanging each other. And I'm about to set up a small search company to find small and medium-sized companies in Germany that have a succession planning to move them into a more self-organized way of working and also buying them together with a group of investors. And next to that, as I said, based out in Stuttgart, Germany, family with 4 kids and a dog, all female. So no hair, but always good mood.
Nice. Maybe you mentioned also corporate rebels, so maybe a couple of words about what's that, because I don't think the audience would know. So
Yeah, I think it's a very good, I would call it a movement that started by 2 Dutch guys, Pim and Joost. They were frustrated with their corporate jobs, and what they did is they took all their savings and traveled the world to visit companies that do and organize themselves in a different way, and started writing about that. That's already 10 years ago, and I think what they are now up to is like really creating a community of progressive organizations that think in new ways of working, new ways of organizing, and find the mixture between human focus and still high business and innovative performance, right? So I think it's really cool. They have over 100 companies already in the Rebel Cell movement. And as I said, I'm leading the German cell. So it's a really good community to learn from peers and exchange with each other.
how many companies in the German cell?
It's always a bit fluctuating, but we're around over 10 people, 10 organizations now. And I'm also leading, together with my business partner, Stephanie, the global cell, where all countries are represented that don't have an own cell yet. So there we are over 15 companies from Brazil to Uganda to Australia. And the most tricky part is to find a common time slot so that people are awake and
But you mentioned
together.
progressive organizations. So what do you actually mean? Like, how progressive do you have to be part of that group of companies?
Well, very good question. So the first part of your question is what is progressive? I think progressive in my terms, a very good description. If you see the way you work and organize also as an innovative part of how you do your business, right? I think the vast majority of companies, they put a lot of focus on being innovative in products and services and whatever, but they just plug and play the very, very traditional hierarchical model on how to organize, which usually leads to, if your business grows, to more bureaucracy, less speed, more people being involved as leaders who are decision makers and are not really leading people. So I think that's other terminologies are more like self-organizing, teal, agile. But I think the common denominator is how can we make sure that we don't fall into the trap of bureaucratic organizations that have no speed in their decision making, in their innovative power. I think that's probably the best description.
So what, and maybe some examples of, I mean, known companies that actually do this or are part of your German cell?
Yeah. So I think you described who can join such a movement. I think you need to be either very progressive already, means hierarchically less organizations like a Buurtzorg, which is like an elderly care home in the elderly care nursery service with over 20,000 people in the Netherlands. You need to be on a very radical transformation journey, like the Bayer Group, which is this 100,000 plus people organization in Germany that redefine on how they organize themselves. It can also be like a small founder-led company out of Portugal that is actually really putting a lot of focus on human-based management. And we have also a member which is like an NGO from Uganda, which teaches and learns people on, educate people, orphans and youth people that are struggling to found their own enterprises, social enterprises. So you don't need to be very progressive, but you need to have a bold plan to become, or you either are very progressive in how you create value for your customers and associates.
Nice. But let's start from our topic of the day, which was Agile and why Agile might not be enough. So we have 1 hour, more or less. And just also to mention, so I don't forget that you will be here with us in Tallinn also on the 12th of March, right? At our next day conference. So really happy to have you there as well. And where actually you will, of course, then more dig into your experiences from Bosch and elsewhere, right?
No, I think when you approached me already, I remember very well when you approached me a couple of months ago, which it was, I think, at the beginning of the year already, that you're planning a very cool conference and you speak about March. And I said, well, in March, I'm already booked. But then you said, it's March 26th. I said, this man I want to support because you have the heart at the right place and you look forward to planning something very, very cool. And I think looking at the speaker lineup, not speaking about myself, but the others, I think it's definitely a place to be. And I think it's a fantastic group of people that you pull together. So
Thanks.
Really looking forward to that one.
But starting from, can you remind me again, how many years were you actually in Bosch?
I started there 2017 and stayed there for over 7 years. So to be very honest, when I started and I looked for another job outside of Accenture, which was like a pure consulting job, agile at the focus, also focus on digital transformation topics. I wanted to, as I said, I have 4 kids, so this Monday in the plane, Friday back to the plane was not really suitable at that time. So I was looking for a new job and I was really intrigued by this offering of Bosch because why? Because it's not a software company. It's not fresh and new. It's over 100 years old. It builds real tools and stuff. I was really interested. Why do they want to change on how they work? Right? There was not a crisis, which is a positive thing. So they were actually quite okay on the market. There was not a new invention or new IT implementation or new legal legislation going on. It was more the question really, how can we create value for our users? And how can we organize ourselves more based on agile principles as we use them? So the word agile transformation at that space, in that context, was much more about what kind of values we want to bring than a detailed description on what you need to do from A to Z.
And maybe, actually, before I go there, just to remind to all our listeners that you can ask any question you like, just put it in the comments next to the YouTube window here. So, and then I'll try to make sure that we actually get to these as well. But my question was, Jochen, about how would you actually define Agile? So let's start from there. So what is Agile? If you were to explain this to your grandma.
It's a very good hint with the grandma, because I was trying to do that to explain that to my mom a couple of years ago as well, who is not really familiar in that space. And I really like, in many cases, going back to the classical root of a movement, right? And I think if you come to the word agile, it means being adaptive and ready to experiment. And I think if you take that as the basis, then I think Agile is really focusing on being adaptive and ready for experimenting. And best to learn about I think, is in this Agile manifesto. So that's basically the root cause of the Agile movement. Is at that time a group of developers came together and really questioned themselves on how to build the best software in the world. And they didn't so mention you need to follow a plan A to Z, or you need to tick box 100 boxes to have the best software ready. But they really focused on how do we need to work together in an open, transparent way. How do we need to make sure that it's more about people collaborating than documenting everything? How is it more about creating value for our users than following a plan? So there are a couple of ideas behind that. I think if you take it back to this, well, more true than ever, right? It's really, really important at the moment as well. And it also brings you a lot of insights that it's like with many movements, also there has been a lot of buzzwording and bullshit bingo with Agile, of course, which I think is not helping the movement, and it's not helping the people that initiated the wave. No.
But I mean, are we only talking about Agile in terms of software development, or basically we are applying this to everything? Like, what's your experience also in Bosch?
I would say, while knowing that where the roots are, which is software, I think we have seen multiple companies and organizations trying to use that also to the services industry, but also to the product industry. And for those of you who are not familiar, but I mean, probably everybody knows the company Bosch, but the power tools division is basically one of the few consumer goods divisions of Bosch. The other parts are mainly for the automotive part, but the consumer goods part, where you can really buy the cool brands in Amazon and all the Obis and Bauers of the world, which is like really building lawnmowers, drill drivers, grinding machines, fixing tools. And we really wanted to prove that also building real tools that you can touch and feel lack usually a very good collaborative effort within the company to create the best product for the user. And I think we proved ourselves that it's also a right way to do it for product companies. And Bosch is, by the way, not the only one who's trying that out or is experiencing with that. So I've been just recently back from a trip to Beijing, to China, where there's the biggest White House appliances maker hire. And they're very, I would not call them agile in a way like we talk perhaps today, but they're focused on building small teams without hierarchy, close to the user needs, and making all the decisions that are needed to make their small team successful independently without involving 5 layers of hierarchy. I think is the essence of also how I perceive agile or other new ways of working.
And just to note that Heyer is actually also coming to our conference
really?
in March.
Okay, cool.
So, and I think, aren't they the largest overall manufacturer of home appliances in the world? So people don't actually know this, but I mean, they actually also acquired General Electric appliances at some time. So.
Yeah. I think for your European-based listeners or viewers, I think it's also in Germany, you can buy higher products, but they are not always on the front page. But if you look in other parts of the world, globally, they are definitely the number one. So, I mean, China is a huge market. They are by far the number one on this market in a lot of Southeast Asia. And as you said rightly, I think in 2017, 2018, they acquired GE Appliances, one of the most traditional, not prestigious brands, I think, in the appliances market, in the US market. And they are also on the home market now, turned from being number 4 on their home appliances market to number 1. Also applying these new ways of organizing and even this new management philosophy of theirs. Yeah.
Mm. So, but going back to Bosch and your experience there, how would you rate on a scale of 0 to 10? Like, what was like the implementation of Agile when you joined, and then when you actually left? So, what was the journey?
I think there needs to be, of course, always an honest and transparent. And for me, it's not like trying to create like a dog and pony show and just say we did 100% right and 100% we didn't do any mistakes. I think that part of the truth is that when you try to implement new ways of working or a different way of organizing yourself in a established company with thousands of employees and the revenue that you need to want to secure and expand, I think it's good if you test out things in certain areas of the organization, learn from them, and also apply and scale them if they're successful, right? And in that context, I think we can be very honest that Agile was not intended to be like a framework. We didn't use like one of the scaled Agile frameworks to say we need to do A, B, C, D, E, F, but we really wanted to build a holistic transformation approach. Because being a German myself, knowing the engineers in companies here, if you tell them a word, they start looking on the web, what does it mean? They start to train themselves in this method, looking for training certificates to say, if I've done 5 courses in Agile, I'm Agile, tick box. Let's continue the work we do. But we want to really change the game in a way that it's not only a method, it's not only a process, it's actually a different way of thinking how to create value and a different way on how to put people first. So therefore, we touched also topics like leadership culture, yeah, collaboration between teams, and of course, how we organize ourselves in terms of organizational structure. But I think this focus on more softer topics or more hard topics, like how do we lead in a new era? How do we make sure that smaller cross-functional teams actually collaborate better and not only build up new smaller units? I think that's really the really tricky part.
But I think what my audience here is also very much interested is of course these practical examples of either what were the like challenges and how you solved them, or what are the kind of best practices. So any anything that you can share that actually you remember that's worthwhile while sharing here.
I can share a couple of them, and then perhaps you can ask further questions, or also the audience is invited to ask follow-up questions if I go too quickly over them. But I think the first is your transformation approach, right? I mean, we all come from a world or from an experience where if you set up a project of a certain size, you come together in a small group of circle, you prepare the best slides possible, then you go to the bigger audience, to the associates, invite everybody, and basically tell them, go with us, trust us, we changed the way how we do things here. And I think that's part of the problem, right? So people are not afraid of change per se, but they don't want to be told what to do without being involved. So I think one thing we did quite positively is that we set certain guidelines on what we want to do, right? But you can see them on one slide. It's 5 bullet points. And the rest of the thing was unclear on intention, because we wanted really to co-create the future we see for our division together with the employees, and not set them something in front of them and say, be excited about it and do it with passion, right? So make the people part of the journey, I think, is a very good thing to start with. I mean, the other thing is like, which is, again, going to the people that work for your company, don't underestimate at all the wisdom and the crowd of your organization has, right? So you don't need to read a lot of books if you want to change something. I think the time is rather better invested if you go find dialogue formats in your organization and collect the things that people are bothered about at the moment. I mean, we did a lot of exercise on putting communication first, not about telling them what to do, but invite them to share their current issues and problems. And then categorize them by different areas to make sure that the people feel the impact of what we're trying to do and not see it on nice slides. No. So I think that's some learnings we had.
But then how did you actually do it in practice? Did you do some like small survey groups, or did you approach people like personally, how did actually, yeah?
So I think
happen?
it was a combination of three things. So the first thing is, within the example of Bosch, it's a 20,000 people, but half of it is direct workers, half of it is indirect workers, so blue collars, white collar workers, and we have been divided into, at that time, I think 6 business units, right? So again, divide them by 6. Not all are the same size, but we are smaller business units within the division. And we did not start with all of them by one. We started with one business unit, built some use cases around it, and then said, you know what, take the learnings from this business unit and apply it to the next one, but always inviting the people that are currently in that business unit to come up and invite them for co-creation. So I think you need to keep a running business alive, right? It's not like it's not a greenfield approach. We want to make sure that our revenues don't make a big dip.
Yep.
We want to make sure that we set a new platform for growth. So therefore, we did it one by one, business unit by business unit. We invited in each business unit the people to build a transition team, which consisted of around 5% of the workforce in that business unit, to be real representatives and have a voice for the teams, for the unit, to say, this is what we're aiming for, this is our boldness that we want to achieve. And then also inform the people on a very regular basis, not about what you decided, but what you have created so far, and ask them for feedback. Do you like what you see? What is not helping you? Where do you see room for improvement? So it was pre-COVID when we started. So actually there was more or less like a PowerPoint forbidden thing at the moment, right? We really created white papers, brown papers together with the people, which didn't look nice, but invited the people to come and give their own opinion. And I think that built a lot of trust, that their voice was heard, that they could procreate, and it disappeared a bit the mistrust that people had when we started the journey, because there were, of course, rumors to say, well, everything is already written in stone. They just want to. So I think it was an honest conversation that we started.
But then some skeptical leaders, of course, then might ask, but Jochen, like, what was the outcome of all of this? I mean, coming from all these ideas and conversations, so what tangible outcomes did you actually get from all this?
Well, I think there's a easy answer to give, and there's a bit more the challenging answer to give. And I think I start with the easy answer to give. I think, of course, you how should I say, you measure what you get, or you get what you measure, right? You get what you measure. So how did we start that journey? As I said, it was not in a crisis mode, and I invite every organization to think about what's next before they go into a crisis mode, even though it might be hard to do. But I think because then you're not under the pure economic pressure only, but you can also ask the really big questions, like how do we should be behaving in the next 5 years? What is our right of existence in 7 years? It's easier to answer on the one hand side if your water is not already up the nose, right? So I think that's a very important thing to do. The other thing is that you need to really make sure that you create something that is relevant for the market, right? So this user perspective. How do we get, this was, I think, one of our main drivers there, and what I see also in some of my clients, they really want to be closer to the user needs, and you cannot be closer to the user needs by building additional hierarchies or having more management layers. You actually need to get the decision making down to the group of people that have the most interaction with the customer or with the user, which would create totally new spaces for, I don't know, the call centers of these worlds of big companies, right? If they can make a decision rather than waiting for approvals, that actually has a big impact into the customer journey, into the customer experience of the organization.
And did you get it? I mean, did you get it that far, or what was the outcome of that?
Well, the simple question is, what we wanted to achieve is we wanted to have higher, not only employer engagement, but new people being interested in working for Bosch Power Tools. We wanted to have a higher user experience, a higher user connectivity, and we also want to be more innovative and fast. And I think for the first two, with the employee engagement and interest, we saw a high uprise in people applying for jobs there. We saw a high uprise in people's satisfaction, even compared to our competitors and in the Stuttgart region. The other part with the user closeness, I think we measured very extensively, and we saw perceived quality going up, with the Amazon star ratings. So we saw a lot of positive impact. And then truth is also, when you speak about innovative and speed, this was a mixed result, for example, because when you make everything transparent, it doesn't always increase speed, but it makes everything visible, and which creates then a new form of questions that you can ask yourself, right? Or to give you another example, a lawnmower from today is totally different than from 10 years ago. So it's also hard to compare development times between the two of them. So there's a mixed picture, which is true. But I think overall, we can also be humble enough to say we have come through certain crisis moments much better than before, because people are more empowered and more feeling, that they can contribute. And I see that in some of my clients as well, right? So when you make sure that the people are more in the driver's seat, they don't need to leave their brain on the parking spots in the company car space, right? They really are asked and valued. Then I think you see high potential that also additional value comes being created when you ask them.
But if let's say that I'm a CEO of a large, also let's say manufacturing company, and I also I'm inspired by what I'm hearing from you right now. So I mean, how can I actually then put that into practice?
I've seen it in many companies that I'm trying to follow or that I'm engaging with, that this start at the top from the CEO is actually a very good starting point, because at the end of the day, it's also this role is very prominent. It has a high role model aspirations, but the truth to it is also that it really starts with, I would even call it with some inner work, right? So I think there needs to be, perhaps even before you start making it public that you want to change something big, there needs to be some inner work happening in those people. I mean, you can read books about this. You can exchange with other CEOs that have already transformed themselves. But what I want to say with that, it's worth to spend time with yourself as a CEO. Am I ready to start something like that? Am I ready? If I would invite people to join me and we have a white paper in front of us, would people actually contribute, or would they be scared of me? Would people speak up, or would they just wait that I speak and show how I would do it, right? So I think it's an inner journey that starts first. But if you're over that phase, or if you're really authentic, because people feel and authenticity, right? If you fake it, they will realize in 5 seconds, and then it's already down the drain. But if you really have this honesty of saying, then I think the most important part is listening. Learn to listen. And I mean that very honestly, that most of the leaders have not been trained to listen a lot, but they have been made to make decisions and be the smartest in the room and speak first and have an opinion about everything. And I think all of these three, four things are not really helpful to build a movement where people are invited. So it's about go to the meeting and don't be the first to speak up. Perhaps be the last with an opinion. If people ask you to come to you to say, can you help us make a decision? Judge yourself, is this a decision that they could make themselves? If yes, resist to make an answer to them, to give an answer to them, which is very, very hard if you're in a leadership position, and usually the expectation has been very different. Yeah.
It's like somebody said, when you as a CEO are the smartest person in the room, then you are in the wrong room.
Yes, exactly.
But going back to Agile, I mean, many organizations and teams have experience with Agile, but why still are then many of them quite slow? So what's the challenge with Agile, in your opinion or practice?
I mean, it's now a very, very personal opinion, so don't judge me on it. But as you asked me, I also want to be very honest. I think in the business world, there's always people would love to jump on new things consistently, right? And I think Agile was kind of new, at least in the product and service space 10 years ago. And once people jump on it, I think it's being misused and buzzword bingo a lot, right? And I think it's definitely not honest and nice to the movement it intended to do. But people fall also into to the trap. They want to have best practices, but what is best? They want to have a detailed script on what to do, A, B, C, D. They want to be trained and certified in blah, 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 to have a black belt in Agile. And that makes it very going down one rabbit hole to focus a lot on to giving it even too much structure and too much, I don't know, it feels like a very, very close fasten your seatbelt thing. And I think it contradicts on what Agile is about to do, or what new ways of working is about to do. It's basically working a lot with trust, working a lot with autonomy, working a lot with making your own decisions, which also means letting go of control, letting go of knowing all the answers. And I think if we go back to this kind of thinking, then there's lots of possibilities, especially in this world of uncertainty. But the Agile movement, like so many other movements, have fallen into the trap that they are foreseen as an answer to everything. And if you have an answer for everything, then it needs to be detailed. And if it's like this, then basically you make yourself redundant, I would say.
But what does this term called Agile theater? So what would you say that this Agile theater looks like in real life for, I don't know, some organizations?
I think the Agile theater looks for me in three things. Make a very nice slide set, communicating to everybody about the values that we don't live. People realized it immediately, right? Openness, transparency, autonomy sounds great, but if people don't feel it, it's actually dead before you speak about it. Secondly, it's a strong focus in Agile theater on structure, building smaller teams, cross-functional, and off you go, rather than enabling the people. What does it mean to have less hierarchy, less bosses, and more cross-functional? How do you make decisions in such a frame? How do you solve conflicts? Because in a cross-functional team, it's not only your marketing team members, it's actually some engineers, some quality guys, some purchasing people who have a totally different way of thinking. So it's really enabling a lot. So Agile theater is only scratching the surface, and it's also not going deep, right? And I think that's easy to do, but Agile theater is then also easy to make disappear again.
And now if you would turn it like around and look at how Agile should be run in an average size, let's say, organization, then like what would be the best practices?
I think there are a lot of different practices and we can speak about it, but I think I still want to start with not a philosophical question, but like a very practical question is like, if you're working and let's say you're the CEO or the founder of a company and you have 200, 500, 5,000 people, how do you see those people? Do you see them as we need to make sure they work? We need to make sure they do what we tell them. We need to make sure that we make sure they don't betray us and that they focus on things? Or do you see your people as a potential for innovation, for freedom and autonomy? So it's also a bit of what kind of picture you have about humans in general, right? And if you decide for the first one, then Agile is definitely not your baby, right? And you see many organizations that are successful in a very command and control driven way. I think it will be coming less and less because the future and the present even is not so predictable that the advantage of such organizations is dominant. And if we say the world will stay unsecure, uncertain, then the question is, and the leaders will not have all the answers, by the way, then we need to say, okay, if we are sure we hired the right kind of people because they are smart and that's why they went through our process, our hiring process, do we really use the full potential of our people? And if the honest answer is no, then you have a lot of potential practices or things that you can ignite this potential and this unleash of potential in the people. But I think it will need to start with a honest assessment on what kind of company have we been so far, how did we treat our people and see our people, and do we want to stay like this or do we want to change?
I think you also mentioned inspiration or something like in that direction. So if I now really feel like I want to, you mentioned inner work. That's what you said. So how do I what are your tips? Or if I now want to get on this journey, then how do I start the inner work, or what should I read or do? Or
well, I think there are always different people, right? So there are certain people who love to read stuff. I can highly recommend a couple of books that I really think are really good for the good readers and for the deep readers. I mean, there's the book about from Gary Hamel and Michele Zanini, Humanocracy, which is really bringing practical examples from companies that organize themselves already very differently.
Corporate Rebels have higher probably, yeah.
Higher and others, right? Yep. So there's the Swedish Handelsbanken, there's Bayer, there is Roche. There are very good examples from very large companies, actually. Then you have also the colleagues again from Corporate Rebels who have written more like a very journalistic, easy to read, but very practical book. And then there's also, it's a bit harder to find, but for those people with more the intellectual, there are also some very interesting professors from MIT or from Harvard or whatever who are putting a lot of brain work into how can companies be very innovative. And they come from a different angle, right? They don't come from the people focus or business performance. They say innovation needs to be much more outside in perspective than rather inside out perspective. Right. So I think that's kind of, and if you have further questions on that, you can always contact me or I provide the more details to you. This is about reading. I also found that some leaders or founders are actually, yes, they like to read, but they really want to have this practical exchange. Right. Therefore, I think it's always good to connect with companies that are actually very forward thinking. And I think it's, on the one hand, much easier than 10, 15 years ago because everybody's on LinkedIn, everybody's connected on the socials. And you cannot imagine how much time I spent also being at Bosch to find other core cool companies and connect directly with them without having any connections inside those companies. So this learning from other organizations is probably the best way because it's practical enough. You can talk openly about anything because it's not your new patent that you talk about. It's really finding people that you can elaborate and do brain work together, and find communities where this opportunity is there that you talk to people. And then from time to time, it might also be on the third level, also interesting to have like an external expert coach. I mean, you're very experienced in your space. I'm experienced in the German space to bring that outside in perspective, but not in a term of bringing in a bunch load of consultants that do the work for us, but rather as like the little guys from the outside that pick your brain and start this inner journey that you need.
Yeah. We have a question from the audience as well here. So when, let's say, 20,000 people are used to certain ways of working, like top-down decisions, following instructions, and so on, so where did you start the change? Was it process, culture, structure, or something else?
It's a very good question. So I think the honest answer is, of course, you don't start with 20,000 at one go. So we identified a couple of key experiments. What do I mean with key experiments or projects? If they would have not worked, it would have hurt, right? So it's like revenue-based projects, not like just like a project that you do somewhere in your cellar, and if it doesn't work, nobody cares. So it needs to be something where you can really test out things. I usually would not start with structural questions, remove hierarchy, less people at the top or whatever. But I think that's what we did, for example, in Bosch. We started a lot with asking the organizational structure questions, because it gives a lot of guidance, not only to the former leaders, but also to every employee in the organization. And then having a journey of self-enablement, self-learning for the people being involved in those new structures, because it's not just a light switch where you turn it off or turn it on, right? It's like you create a new basis, but you need to accompany people and really work with them together on bringing them forward in this thinking. Because if you believe in the potential of people, then you need to also awakening that potential, and you need to also give time to learn and grow in that new environment.
By the way, do you remember what was the turning point, if any, in Bosch at that time that really changed something?
At that time, it was two very promising examples in these lighthouse projects, as we called them, and then also making sure that we have a strong buy-in from the leadership at the top to make sure that it's not like a cosmetics, that we really want to change fundamentally on how we organize and how we create. So this strong support from the leadership was really actually very, very helpful. And I think this growing, curiosity in the people to be in for something that is probably bigger than they thought. No.
You mentioned, I think, autonomy quite a number of times here during our talk. But what about alignment? Alignment to the strategy and the OKRs or whatever goals we are having, and then autonomy. So how do you actually balance, or should you actually balance both of them, or like what's your take on this?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the ideal world or the sweet spot is always we have an aligned autonomy, which means the smaller teams, they are autonomous in their decision making, but they are like little units all achieving the same goal that the bigger framework wanted to have. The truth of it, of course, is also a bit that I think persons identify words very differently. So if I would give the manager of Group A to say, your team is now very autonomous, you can make all the decisions that you need, and you say the same exercise to the same task to the Group B, Group A might realize, actually, we're now a small team, cross-functional. It's great to be autonomous, but we rely on other people in terms of providing us services, and I'm autonomous, but I'm listening to everybody. Right? Because by listening to everybody, I can make the best decisions for our team's success. And with the same circumstances, Group B basically says, autonomous sounds great. I'm free. I don't need to ask anybody. And I make all the decisions without asking anybody. So we have the same, I would say, the same criteria, but it's interpreted very, very differently. The one that's looking for listening, making sure we have every information available and making a conscious decision that we empower ourselves. And the others say, oh, autonomous is great because it doesn't, we just make the decision as we want. And I think what this second team is missing is that with autonomy also comes responsibility, right? You have responsibility also to make sure that it fits into the bigger frame. You have responsibility for the team members. You have responsibility for the success of the team. And it's also this connection, I think, is very, very important, in my opinion.
I also remind the audience that if you have any questions, then keep posting them to Jochen here, so I can ask Jochen anything actually coming from either Bosch, Accenture, or your current experience. By the way, coming back to what you do now with Bold to Move, so is it more about now self-managing organizations, Agile? So what are you doing mainly?
So for me, the term Agile, I think, is not the right terminology to use in 2025 because of what we partly described, what had happened over the last 10 years. Self-organizing is probably also a bit complicated for certain people, but I think the idea is that in a complex world, people cannot be set up in a pyramid where the top makes the decision for the bottom. And I think that's self-organizing is probably, for me at least, the best way to describe that a group of people comes together, not waiting that somebody tells them what to do, but they organize. If we agree that all people in the room are smart enough to make their own decisions, then we need to organize a system where it's not about one leader telling everybody to do, but everybody's taking their responsibility to the team to contribute to this team success. And there will be leadership tasks in such a teams, and perhaps we even have still one leader, right? But it's more about how can we distribute the tasks that we so far have defined as, well, the boss does it, to make it embedded into the team. So that's where Bold to Move is helping, where my business partner Stefan and me, together with some other co-workers, are helping organizations of all sizes. So, in Germany we have, for example, the German, as we call it, Mittelstand, which is usually family-owned companies between, 500 and 3,000 people working for them, which are family-owned, but also ask these questions now, how can we be innovative going into the next generation? We also have some big corporates that we support, either in global corporate journeys or in very division-specific journeys. And we even have some governmental associations where they also question themselves. It's actually one of the interesting parts. How can we organize ourselves, not challenging the organizational structures too much because they're kind of written in stone, but how can we make sure that it still creates value for the citizens of our city, of our federal state? Yeah.
But Jochen, can you maybe give us an example of a transformation? So like what the organization was and now what it is, like being a, rather traditional organization, now being either self-managed or having these new ways of working. So I think an example would be good.
So perhaps a good example, without saying a name, but I think a good example is actually from an agency, from a governmental agency that we're working with, right? So it's a group of over 20,000 people working for a government organization in Germany, and for actually, because some of that stuff is very security relevant. They don't talk about changing the organizational structure. But they actually built up an innovation hub, which is about over 300 people strong now, that is actually trying to not only challenge the big organization, but also providing them with continuous new innovations, right? Be it digital innovations or product innovations. And I think this even, I would even call it dual systems that exist next to each other, learning from each other, but also being always a bit in a back and forth, I think is really, really good to see, because it brings fresh, innovative ideas into the bigger system. It also relies on the stability of the bigger system. So I think that's a very practical example where you can start small. There were 20 people a couple of years ago. Now it's over 300 people. And you already see that it has a big influence on the bigger organization. Right, I think that's a very practical one.
And what are the practices within that hub or within these teams? So what are they doing differently than in any other, part of the organization?
So they work with less hierarchy. They have much more cross-functional teams, and they were project-based, right? So they work together as a team on a project, and then they dissolve again. And they also use, as you described earlier, which is a method that I've seen in many companies, is also this OKR methodology to make sure that this, not only the 300 people have some goals where they want to go, but it's also clear and transparent to the larger organization what is the value contribution of this innovation hub. Mm-hmm. So I think these are three very practical examples.
And now if I, again, trying to be very practical here, so listening to you here and wanting to try something. So what would be like one really practical thing I could do, running in a very traditional achiever, oriented organization where profits are everything and so on. So and I want to change, I want to do something. So where can I start?
That's it's a very good question. Of course, it needs to be a bit matching to very individual situations the people are in at the moment, right? But I've seen really great examples already with these small nudges that partially I described a bit earlier, right? If you're a leader and you go to your next meeting room, to your next decision meeting, perhaps be the last one to make a call. I think it's really important to listen to the people in the room, because if people are not heard and not listened to, but I've seen so much change when I asked some leaders to enter a decision-making room and not be there on time, not come late. Because if you come late to a meeting and you're the leader, then nothing happens before and you open the door and everybody's looking at you. And it's like they just wait that you start speaking, right? So be on time and not be the first to talk. Listen to everybody and then come up with your opinion. And I think it will take more than one meeting to do that exercise, because people are probably behaving in a different way. But keeping that inner strength to keep the calm for a while and keep the silence for a while, I think is a major exercise that you as a leader can do. I think another exercise that if you're, for example, concerned that, I don't know, Group A is not supporting Group B, or that we are not all in for the greater good, that's what I also see in many organizations, then I say, don't change anything, but in your next one-on-one with your manager, with your direct report, who's responsible for A, ask him what has he done to help team B. And I think in the first meeting, this guy will think you're a bit drunk or misinterpreted things. But if you ask him the third and the second time and the fourth time what he helped to make team B more successful, you will be sure he will be ready to have some examples. So this helps already a collaboration culture. You don't need to start with the structures. You don't need to start with removing hierarchy and letting people go. It's like testing those small experiments on how ready would be your organization to listening to such examples and experiments.
The first story you shared, that reminded me of, I think, a company you probably know, Quimua in Bilbao region. So, and I remember the CEO saying something like, when I come to work, and that's basically a manufacturing company. So, and he said that when he comes to work, he usually does a walk around the factory, like in the morning. He starts from one person and then to the next and so on. It's not a large organization. I think it's like 50 plus employees. And he said that sometimes he finishes this round at maybe 1 o'clock. So he comes at 9 and at 1 o'clock he finishes the round. So he's kind of listening, just listening to people, not telling them what to do, but really like being like a coach or I don't know, organizational psychologist or something like that. He said also something like, it feels I haven't even worked up until 1 o'clock during the usual days. So yeah.
I think it's really it's a very good example, and I also visited Quimua. I think, and you see other examples like that. The advantage is like you really sense the organization. Like, I mean, again, for me, an organization in a positive way is a bit like an organism, right? It breathes. It consists of smaller units to create something bigger, and we should much more listening to this organization. Where does it not work well? Where do people are happy? Where not? And it's a bit like if you compare that from an image perspective about your own body experience, right? Yes, you might have a headache, but the reason for that might be actually you have a hangover from yesterday, right? Listening to your body is not like fixing just where it hurts. It's like really getting a feeling of, okay, this feels good, this does not feel good. Have I listened? Have I taken care of myself and whatever? And I think that's how I love seeing organizations as a living organism and very individual, right? So every organization is special and has its very positive things that they need to be discovered.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think this is not definitely done enough in nowadays in organizations. And just to contrast this, I mean, with another example, I was working some time back in Kazakhstan, and I remember like a large corporate organization where they had I think it was a Turkish CEO who was let go at some point, but it was something like when he came to the office building, then people were cleared from the lobby and from the elevator. They were basically pulled out of the elevator because the CEO was coming to the office. So it's like total contrast to actually, feeling the organization. Let's close or try to close this with AI. So because AI will most probably disrupt, everything and everyone. I mean, some people say that all of us will be out of jobs. 99% will be, I don't know what we'll do. So what are you seeing currently in Germany and where is the world going?
Well, it's a very big question for the last question. So we can have a follow-up webinar on that one, perhaps, to share my thoughts. So, but I try to at least nudge some ideas I have there. I think, yes, AI is different from other discoveries or technology advantage. It's really disruptive. On the other hand, I think as every new technology has its huge advantages. If you think about medicine, if you think about certain work types that probably are never made for human beings to be done. I think it's a huge potential. It also has some disadvantages, especially risk about it can be misused also for things that that shouldn't be used for our human species. But I think what's clear for me is as long as we approach this topic with the same curiosity and the willingness to learn with it, I think there's high potential also to make it very fruitful and good for us as human beings. Right? There will be tons of risk, and there will be always people who say, well, we cannot control it anymore. And I'm also not an AI expert, so perhaps I might be wrong as well on that one. But I think we should be also a bit optimistic and curious on how we can use it to make it perhaps for our better cause.
But Jochen, what's your take on, if we talk about AI, AI context and also trust, autonomy, and also all these self-managed, self-organizing organizations? So what will change there?
I think we have a chance there to make certain work types that nobody of us wants to do done by not humans, and it will perhaps help us to come to focus on those things which are really human values, human beings focused. What do I mean with that? I mean, I have kids in school, right? So at the moment they're very focused on learning knowledge, where to find information, whatever, but it's like really a lot of knowledge put in their brain. Perhaps that's not the right moving forward. But perhaps the school should much more be about music, art, sports, which is something which is connecting people, builds on creativity and whatever. So I think it will redefine everything we say, but I think what is not being missed is there will be, as long as humans are on Earth, and fingers crossed it will stay for a long time, there will be this human interaction, human connectiveness might become even more important than we imagine today, because it's this true human connection that is becoming probably the unique identifier or unique USP for us as humans. And if you go down that hole, then to say what makes us really humans, then I think trust and autonomy and even love, perhaps,
and purpose
is something important. And purpose is something very essential, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. It has been really, really wonderful having you here, Jochen, and we could probably talk here for hours.
Yeah.
But we don't have all these hours. Before we close, Jochen, so what will you be talking about when you actually come to Tallinn on the 12th of March? So give us a teaser of why should I as a leader come and listen to you?
I think it's still in the making what it will be exactly about, but you can be curious if any of the topics that we spoke about now puts your interest first, then please show up in Tallinn. It will be definitely about how can we make organizations more innovative, more human, and therefore better business performance as well. So I think for me, it's not an either or. It's like a combination of more human, more business success. And
amazing.
How you can do that.
Amazing. So 12th of March in Tallinn, next day conference. So you'll definitely see Jochen there. So
yes, I'm looking forward to that a lot. Eero, thanks a lot for having me.
thank you very much, Jochen.
Perfect. Bye bye.
Bye bye.